it's a matter of even just playing telephone in the aspect where as time goes on too, the stories get even more extravagant, and then they start separating from each other even more, where maybe when they were first originally telling this story, everything was a little bit closer, and then through generation, each generation's adding another little piece of the tale. So now these tales seem like they're so far apart with little connecting pieces, but that's because the parts that are so far apart were all the additives that got added through the years, and the connecting pieces are what the base of the story was to begin with, that everybody was seeing from the same perspective. Because even just in general, you saw something that happened right in front of your eyes, and then you try to retell the story 10 years later, and it's going to have some added details that you see as fact because it's just been tuned into your mind at that point. And then you're also going to miss out on some details. And then you tell the same story again another 10 years later, and there's going to be more details that got added, more stuff that got taken away. And that's just within one person telling a story, that there's already minute details. Now imagine that through generations and generations of people retelling stories. Imagine how far off that's realistically going to be from the base story. It's going to have the main base pieces, but all the extravagant stuff's going to be blown out of proportion. And more often than not, people are trying to look at stuff down to the finite exact detail instead of just sitting back and taking a broader lens of the whole thing as a whole, and realizing that there is still room for storytelling within any encounter or quote story.
Yeah, sometimes it's not looking at the minutiae of every detail, it's looking at the consistent trends and themes and trying to develop a hypothesis that way. But you're exactly right. The greatest analogy to what you just said is the fishing story. Everyone's gone fishing before, and your buddy goes, yeah, I caught a fish and it was this big, and they might do a foot. And the next time they tell someone, it's a little bit bigger. And then they're at the pub and they're having a few beers with their mates, and suddenly the fish is like 6 foot long. It's the biggest fish they've ever caught. But you could have been there with that person.
It almost pulled me out of the boat.
Yeah, exactly. People change stories and embellish things all the time. So what happens with oral storytelling over 50, 60,000 years? Things are going to change. But I think the core element, the meaning, the intention behind those stories, the reason why they were handed down, why they were so important, that's the crux that people need to get to.